morning, viewers, and welcome to the news review. This morning, we are expecting one of our panelists, Mheshimiwa Jacob Macharia, Member of Parliament for Molo. But in the meantime, it's my pleasure to have in the studio this morning Mheshimiwa Chris Omalo, Member of Parliament for is it Kimilili or Kiminini?
Kiminini.
Kiminini.
Trans-Nzoia County. Thank
you very much. On my extreme right, Mheshimiwa David Ochieng, Member of Parliament for Ugenya, who apparently, from reports we have, quit ODM. You'll tell us more about that. And Mheshimiwa Barak.
No, plain Barak.
Mheshimiwa is a honorable name. You're a honorable
It's a most dishonorable name, as we are going to establish.
Barak Muluka is a political analyst. He's also a writer. Most of you out there enjoy reading works of his hands. Welcome to the panel, gentlemen. And we kick it off with headlines. The Daily Nation says there's frenzy of theft and bungling. This is a report that was presented to the presidency in regard to the Rio Olympics 2016. Apparently Kenya did so well, but nobody seems to remember that. All we remember is the fiasco that it was, embezzlement of funds, procurement of tickets irregularly, and so many other things. The Standard has a rather sad human interest story. A sad state of affairs. Tens of thousands are laid off in a growing economy. The pain of losing jobs, or the pain of lost jobs. Apparently 2,600 people lost their jobs when Karuturi, the flower industry, closed a shop. This amid the loss of about 400,000 jobs as several SMEs are closed down. Also on the front of the Standard story we'll be looking at in details is a war on corruption. It's now been escalated to the principals. Raila Odinga attacks Uhuru over Waiguru and DP aids. On the other hand, Uhuru himself attacks Raila for being insincere. Gentlemen, the story on the Standard, page 1, loss of jobs in a growing economy. Barak.
It speaks of a very serious incongruency. On the one hand, an economy can grow, but on the other hand, people are losing jobs, people remain jobless. In fact, the levels of the growth of the economy, when looked at vis-a-vis poverty, they are in contraindication. It's a suggestion that there would be those who are benefiting from that growing economy, while a very great portion of the population is not participating actually in the economy as such. Maybe they participate as producers, people who are helping the economy to grow, but they are not participating as beneficiaries. We must start asking ourselves whether that is sustainable, because what happens is that you have a completely shrinking class of the rich and an expanding class of the poor, and that is a very dangerous situation.
Chris, is this a normal occurrence, having an economy growing? I'm told we grew from 5.6% to 5.9% this year. That's a projection, and yet we are losing thousands of jobs. Is it normal?
It is abnormal. In fact, one of the critical indicators in any economy or growing economy is creation of jobs. If you are seeing jobs are being lost, small and medium enterprises are closing down, that's an indicator showing that the economy is growing at a negative rate. I want to take you back to the memory lane. When President Moi left power, the GDP of this country was growing at a negative rate. When President Mwai Kibaki took over, he came up with a strategy called ERS, Economic Recovery Strategy. And we saw the economy of this country growing at a positive rate. Then after the ERS, he came up with a Vision 2030. And it grew up to about almost 8%. It was not 8%, 7 point something. Then the clashes that we had, we went down. The Jubilee government has been on record saying that this country, in terms of economic growth, has gone up. But the reality on the ground is at the negative. I heard the president saying yesterday that the economy had gone to 0 point something, now it's gone up. This is on the paper. But practically, when you go to the ground, there's no any positive indicator showing that the economy is growing. And the cardinal responsibility of any presidency is to ensure the growth of economy. When you go to the United States, one of the critical things that made Donald Trump to win the locals was about the issue of the economy. Remember the slogan, to make America great again. Great again in terms of economic growth, great again in terms of employment. The locals do not have the jobs. So in this country, what the president is saying is contrary to what's on the ground. The truth of the matter is we have a problem about corruption. There are few people who are benefiting. Money is going into the few pockets of some few individuals, but the majority of Kenyans are crying. Punda imechoka.
Mheshimiwa David Ochieng, some people argue that the best way, the most practical way to look at economic growth is to look at how many more people are able to put food on the table, not necessarily how many people are employed. Your take?
Yeah, I think this has to be looked at from two different points of view. I happen to be a student of economics, and so I want to start by saying that economists say that there is no necessarily a correlation between the numbers that you see and poverty. That you can have an economy growing in terms of numbers, but in terms of the well-being of the people, because it's always about the standard of living of the people, will be low because of a number of fundamentals that go with it. Remember, when this government came to power, within a year they had done what they were calling rebasing. They were recalibrating the way we calculate and the way we say how much we've grown with. Basically, they say that time to fit with the current trends of marginal economic growth. But more fundamentally, Charles, is that in the last 5 years, not just during this government period, but in the last 4 years, a couple of things that have happened that I think we need to interrogate without politics in it. One is that the environment for doing business in this country, much as paperwork has been very easy to do, you can open a company within a day or two, but the things that make business easy, electricity, we've not tackled that. Our infrastructure, especially in the flower farms, if you know how much these guys contribute to the economy and how they are treated in this country, you'll be surprised. I know the owners of those companies are mostly Wazungus, but in the last 5 years, I can say this because I know they have mostly moved to Ethiopia. I'll not be surprised if the owners of Karuturi probably have bought farms in Ethiopia
and relocated
because of our business environment. And then two, in those last 4 years, you've seen us doing massive construction, housing industry growing fundamentally. But what are we using in construction? We are importing tiles, we're importing cement, we're importing iron sheets, we're importing steel. Basically, we are exporting jobs. And so I don't understand how you expect us to create jobs when you are keeping the Chinese at work by importing everything else from China. So basically, you're creating jobs in China and taking our jobs away. That's what's happening in this economy. In any economy that depends on tenders, any economy where suppliers supply air,
tenderpreneurship,
any economy where we don't value hard work, but we value how much you've earned, we value what car you drive, any economy that does not value artisanry, any economy that does not value the work, the hard work that the people on the ground do, will always grow in figures, but with almost zero growth in terms of the living standards of the people. And this is where we are. And so job creation isn't something that happens on its own. It's a deliberate effort that a government says that we're going to connect everybody to the grid. Okay? So you're going to buy 1 million transformers. And so you buy 1 million transformers from India, hitting jobs in India, using our taxpayers' money.
I'll come back to you.
Instead of setting up, because if you want to create jobs, you must be deliberate.
I'll come back to you, David. Barak, at this point, Jacqueline Mugo, the CEO of Federation of Kenya Employers, says that one of the most affected sectors is the banking industry. They have had to lay off staff, and reason being the issue of the Banking Amendment Act 2016. Apparently, the general public was told, guys, this issue of interest rates will have colossal effects on your livelihoods. But Kenyans said, no, reduce the rates. Your take on it?
You see, bankers of the banking industry is used to making grotesque profits. grotesque, completely humongous profits, and they would like to remain within those brackets. Indeed, when you look at the people who have lost jobs, significant portions are from the banks, and they are saying they are going to be laying off even more, and not just laying off, but completely dismissing people. This has got to do with the reality that they are used to making certain kinds of profits, and
they're used to some level of comfort,
and which must lead us to ask the question that is it true that economic growth must always be marked by benefits spreading across society, and it's not possible that that is always the case. Mheshimiwa Chris Wamalwa says that when you look at the levels that they suggest that the economy has not grown, that is not true. The economy can grow without a majority of the people enjoying the benefits, so that we begin asking the question, the economy has grown for who? I think that is what we must recognize, that there's every possibility that we could be evolving into a slave economy, where the slave owners become the beneficiaries. They can always say, we have grown. And that reminds us of the wise man who talked about two kinds of what they call the niggers in the United States of America, the nigger of the house and the nigger of the field. And when master says the economy is growing, the nigger of the house says, yes, our economy is growing. And the nigger of the field says his economy is growing. When the master buys a new car, the nigger of the house, be patient, professor, you are
it's okay.
Yes, containment. When the nigger of the house says our new car, the nigger of the field says our sweat. That's what people need.
So it's a complete contrast. Actually, one Joy Kiru, I think she's a lecturer at the Nairobi University Economics Department, she says it's possible for an economy to grow.
Yes.
People lose jobs. It's called a jobless growth.
Indeed.
At this point, I want to ask you, Chris. The World Bank, according to this article, ranked Kenya the third most improved country globally in ease of doing business. And the country moved 21 places in the log to join 100 countries as a favorable business environment. World Bank is a credible and reputable international organization. Do you think they would be wrong?
No, I think I want you to understand the difference in terms of ease of doing business and the growth of economy. When you talk about ease of doing business, you're looking at the parameters that will enable you as an entrepreneur or an investor to do that business. For instance, in this country, they've tried to make it a one-stop shop in terms of the new investors to come there to start businesses. In terms of the long process of licensing has now been reduced. We have had a lot of consolidation of the laws. So if that was one of maybe the consideration when it comes to the laws, yes, you can say it is true, because it is ease. How is we're looking about the entry? Are there entry barriers of coming as an outsider to do business? And I know in this country we have the Investments Authority, which is actually in charge of this, particularly the FDIs, foreign direct investments. If you go to the country, how is it easy for me to enter? You know, ease of doing business is totally different when it comes to performance. And that's what I want to say. The World Bank report, I do agree, in terms of ease of doing business. You know, Kenya has grown from, I'm told there used to be about 300 signatures. It came to 21. Now there are remaining 2 or 3. So in terms of legislation or the process of entry, that one has been eased. It is easy. But now the issue is that aspect of sustainability. And I want to inform...
To be number one is easy.
Absolutely. You know, ease of doing business, how easy can I enter to enter that particular market in terms of the legislation, for instance? So that is where it comes from. But in terms of doing business, and before that I want to mention to my friend Barak, when you go to any economy, there are indicators you look at for you to be able to establish whether that economy is doing well. For example,
we are not talking about doing
just
well.
A minute, listen. I need to do the listening.
You'll respond to him.
Yeah.
Let's hear
you
what
know, you mentioned there's something called per capita income. I don't know whether he understands that.
He does.
I guess
no, I asked, I don't know what that. I don't know. No, being a writer does not mean you understand everything.
That is condescending and lowering.
So I mentioned the issue of per capita income. When you go to any country, you look at the per capita, and per capita in this case, you look at the total population of that particular economy. So in this case,
and the average earnings.
Absolutely. So in this case, in Kenya, why I'm saying we have a big problem in terms of the economic growth. You know, there's a principle called the Pareto's principle, the 80-20% rule, and this was by an Italian economist. So if at all money is going into selected few people and the majority do not have that improved welfare, then the economy is not doing well. If the economy is doing pretty well, one of the critical things we have to look at, we must be able to see that there is improvement of welfare of the entire population.
The entire population.
Absolutely. It is actually very, very critical. But we can't have an economy doing well. And we have a lot of poverty.
That's not what
there's a lot of criminality.
Actually,
the distribution, the element of distribution.
The thing is, when the story talks about a growing national economy, it's a representation of the general population.
Absolutely.
Now, what Barack was saying,
aspect of equity.
What Barack was saying is, you have situations where the house nigger says our economy is growing because the owner has said the economy is growing. The guy in the field says our economy is growing.
That is what I say. There's something called equity.
But they're saying the same thing.
For any economy,
why does
we're not differing. There's something called equity.
Yes, there's something called equity.
The distribution.
You've made your point.
The distribution in this country, there is a big gap.
It is
into the few people, but the majority, they have empty pockets. That's where equity comes in.
Okay, first let us do this in orderly fashion.
Let's give each other a chance.
Let's do it in a manner that suggests that we respect not just each other, but the viewers.
Precisely. Go on, Barack.
Yeah. There's a difference between an economy doing well and an economy growing. You look at the indicators, especially the micro indicators, the invisible things that you don't see with the eyes, and they suggest that the economy has grown. It's in terms of what is harvested from that political economic environment, how it is redistributed, and who enjoys the benefits of that economy, of that growth, is a different question, and I think that's what David and myself are talking about. Now, when you say an economy has grown, you are not necessarily saying that the economy is doing well, because for the economy to do well, there are other parameters that come into the equation. Questions of sustainability. Is that growth sustainable? One of the answers that we must give is that the security, that people are comfortable, they are employed, and that you can see that growth carrying on. But what's happening here is that you are fomenting a revolution. Put very simply, the economy can grow, but you foment a revolution, such as the revolution that happened in 1789 in a place called Santo Domingo, which is today modern Haiti. It was a very, very thrifty, very thriving economy. Everybody wanted to actually own Santo Domingo. The French were the original colonizers. The Americans wanted it. The Germans wanted it. But instead what happened was that there was a revolution which made Haiti to become the first independent black republic in the world, because of the contradictions between the economic growth
and the living
conditions, the living standards of the people that we must appreciate.
We have had situations, David, before you wrap up this, because I need us to move on, but we have had situations like China, for example, where the economy is exponentially growing, but the number of unemployed people is soaring.
Yeah, because like I told you, job creation is a very deliberate process, and you need to study how this happens. Now, in the last 3-4 years, again, you've seen competition going very high in the financial sector, with a lot of SMEs also coming up, because that is actually what is in the story, and I wanted to also look at that. Now, when these kind of things happen, technology comes in, and when it comes in, it takes away some jobs. Now, what a government does, a government that wants to create jobs does, is one, how do you retool these guys who are losing their jobs? Okay? And how do you build the capacity of the SMEs to be able to absorb these guys who are losing their jobs from the mainstream financial sector? Like, we have microfinance institutions opened up in this country, so many of them. but they can hardly grow because they needed that government support. They needed some input from government to build their capacity so that they can absorb workers,
the employees,
create jobs. You know, I get distracted whenever I start speaking and he's trying to say something. Yeah, I would want him to say what he wants to say.
Now, gentlemen, we have a situation where about 400,000 SMEs have also been shut down on the same note. Your leaders in your own capacities, as we wrap up on this story, I'll start with you, Chris, very quickly. What would you do or what would you tell as providing leadership to these guys losing their jobs?
First and foremost, it's the responsibility of the government to provide a conducive environment for businesses to grow. And I want to revisit the issue of the banking interest rates. You mentioned that, but we didn't handle that issue. It is actually the contrary. When you look at the banking, the amendment bill, an act which was actually signed by the president, now it's a law, it capped the interest rates. The interest rates were very high in this country. And for you, you could access credit easily. But the challenge was, how do you sustain it? Many people were losing jobs, of course, and many people were losing property which was there as collateral. So I want to say this. It is wrong, the perception of saying that the interest rate, because it was lowered, people are losing jobs. And I want you to give me types that I justify for Kenyans to understand. When you look at the demand and supply law, the higher the demand, the lower the price. There's something called price elasticity of the demand price elasticity. What it means is that when the price of a commodity goes down, the number of people who will afford it, it goes higher. Are we together?
Yeah.
So in this case, when the interest rates were lowered by the banks, it shows that there are many people who could now afford.
I hate to interrupt that.
To afford that. But what happened to the contrary? But what happened to the contrary? No, but you didn't tell me justify.
Just a minute.
This is something, a theory which has been tested.
Let's have some order here.
That's not
1 minute, David.
Can I finish to justify?
No, I have to take you on this. And
okay, take me on this.
We have to provide a clear indication to the public.
Yeah, but let me explain. This is something which is tested.
You cannot use one theory to explain banking.
No, that theory works.
Chris, I wish you'd give the other people a chance.
But you've not given me time to explain.
Because what you're saying has to be clarified.
Yeah, let me clarify. So it is me to clarify, not you.
What I need you to clarify.
Yeah, let me clarify.
What I need you to clarify is you say if the price of a commodity goes down,
yes,
the number of people who can access it are more.
Yes.
And in reference to this, if the interest rates came down,
yes,
more people should access it.
Absolutely.
But do you realize there are guidelines to accessing this commodity?
Now let me. I wish you had given me time.
Now
why
you have
it is?
time.
No. I wish you had given me time
now
for me to explain. Now let me repeat, and you better listen. The price elasticity. Price elasticity means when the price of a commodity goes down, there are more people now who can afford it. And why it's happening contrary in the banking industry, which you should have given me time to explain, is because of the following reasons. In the banking industry, why it's contrary is this. You know, banks were making super profits. There were a lot of wastages. But because they were used to super profits, and now the interest rates have been lowered, they have to look into their system and try to eliminate people so that they reduce the costs that were there, so they can be able to manage that abnormal profits that were there.
Which is what Barack said.
Absolutely, I never said no. So I was trying to justify so that you understand. It's an issue of ethics.
What he's saying is not true with regard to financial services. And I want to explain that.
But I explained why it's not true. That's what I explained.
No, I want to explain.
Just give David a chance.
Let's
not be cantankerous here.
It's not cantankerous. We're giving people a chance.
I wanted to make a point. But you see, when I speak within a second and you're already carrying up your hand, then you rather than have the
classroom to carry out the hand.
To respect
no, justify. The issue is just to justify.
It's very important that we give each person a chance.
Okay,
everybody
give each other a chance, and you'll give me.
You rather have your show, you know.
David,
you know, in financial sector, what happens is this: that when you cap interest rates, it doesn't work the way he says that the president works, because then banks will then decide who they are giving loans to, because you'll have 1,000 people applying, but then they'll now they'll want to look for higher security, they'll want to have better collateral, and so in banking sector, when the interest rates are capped and they go down, fewer people, not more people, fewer people access loans. That's the way the financial sector works. And so you cannot explain it using the price elasticity.
But
I'm a lawyer, yes, but I told you.
You didn't listen. I explained and I said why it is working with the contrary.
No.
Barak, you have been...
Just a minute. So the banks are not laying off, in my opinion, because of... of course, the underlying point is that the banks are not laying off because of interest rates. That is a red herring, that I can assure you.
That's the argument by Jacqueline.
It is a red herring, but you can't explain it the way he's trying to do it. Now, the financial sector, I can assure you, will continue downsizing. And what the government must do, like I said earlier, what the government must do is sit down with the financial sector of this country, the bank owners. That is how you help protect jobs. You saw it when America was in recession in 0708, and Obama came in. He had to sit down with the banking industry
because it could be a bullying tactic.
Yes, and they had to agree. How do you keep your guys at work, and how can we as government help keep those guys at work? When the auto industry was going down in Ohio and these other places, they had to sit down and say, how do you ensure that you continue doing your spare parts, you continue building more cars, and what kind of money can we put in that part of the economy to make sure that no one loses their jobs and new jobs come up? So Charles, the main issue here is this, that as a country, are we helping those who are creating jobs? Are we talking to them to ensure that they are not downsizing? Does the government realize that people are losing jobs?
So the government needs to sit down and
yes, do they realize that they are losing
Barak,
jobs?
I want you to take this particular subject away before we take a commercial break. You have been an employer.
You see, when we talk about a growing economy, and I want to believe that this economy is growing, I don't want to doubt what the World Bank is telling us and what other international authorities are saying about the growth of the economy, far apart from the distribution of the benefits of that economy. One of the institutions that invariably benefits from a growing economy is the banking sector, because all this business is being transacted with the banks playing a role, whether people are borrowing, whether people are repaying, whether people are importing, whether people are exporting, the banks are involved. And therefore, when we look at the question of the banks retrenching, the banks downsizing, we must see it within the context of what David is saying here, that they are hedging in, they are stonewalling because they think that they have been punished. They are not happy with the capping of interest, and they must look for an opportunity to blackmail you and to tell you, because you did this capping, now we have to live with the consequences.
Fair enough. Gentlemen seem to agree on one point. The government has to act. It has to sit down with the investors, the banking industry, which apparently, according to this report, has been the biggest loser, because they have had to lay off the biggest number of employees. And as we speak, although Kenya Airways has so far sent only 80 employees home, there are plans to lay off another 600 in the second phase of the retrenchment, in the biggest job-cutting action in any single institution. Now, we'll take a short commercial break. Remember, this is the news review. In my panel, I have Wakili Chris Wamalwa.
You tell me that he's not.
I'm not.
Oh, you're not Wakili.
He's not.
Okay.
He's a lawmaker.
We have a scholar, Chris Wamalwa. We also have with me Barak Muluka here, and we have David Ochieng, gentlemen who really want to put their points across as far as this news review is concerned. We'll be back after a short while.